Today is going to be a very exciting session. We will be discussing a topic at the tip of everyone's tongues these days around the governance of AI and intelligent automation, and the future of that effort. So, before we get too far into it, to introduce myself as moderator of today's debate, my name is Morgan Conque and I run go-to-market strategy for Ashling, and I have the pleasure of welcoming our two co-founders. Don.
Hi, Don Sweeney, one of the two co-founders. Looking forward to a great discussion.
Marshall.
I am the other co-founder, Marshall Sied, not Don Sweeney, and I play for keeps. So I'm looking forward to this spirited debate heading into the holiday season.
Well,
I feel like I'm gonna start calling you Don from now on, Marshall. That's a good nickname for you. I'll get it right 50% of the time. Now, as a reminder, in this session, we're going to explore some key topics. First and foremost, how organizations are embedding AI and automation into the right structures to maximize value and sustain growth. At any point in time in our previous years, these might have felt like diametrically opposed efforts, and we are seeing a bit of a convergence of the value in combination of these capabilities, and we're excited to see what that looks like for our future. And the second, which CoE model is best and when? I think I'm very curious to see who wins in our efforts today. We'll get into the debate structure here in a little bit and who is for and against. All right, so why are we talking about our governance models for AI and intelligent automation? Well, the question we have today is, what has changed to spark this conversation and this topic? And why does it matter now? We've been dealing with, the exciting generative AI over the last year and a half or so. So why is this relevant? For this, Marshall, I'd love to kind of have you walk through all of the activity we have seen around agentic AI and AI agents.
Sure, happy to, Morgan. And I know you're going to get into the structure a little bit, but I think maybe to save the suspense a little bit for the folks joining, there's not a clear-cut answer. It's going to depend on timing and the maturity of your respective enterprises. But the idea is to externalize basically the debates that we are hearing at a lot of our clients. Maybe empathize a little bit for the debates you guys are having within your four walls. So this quote here is it's basically a microcosm of the tipping point we're at from our perspective. So I'd like to remind everybody that grew up in the intelligent automation space that it wasn't that long ago, 2017, 2018-ish, where it was all a grassroots movement. Came from either shared service or corporate systems, corporate applications, and there were no governing bodies. It was the wild, wild west. This happens in every technical evolution, not revolution, but evolution is probably the best word to use. And at a certain point, when there's enough demonstrable value, you have to start looking at tenets of a governance structure, or else all the capability and value add turns into a detractor for your organization based on confusion and lack of governance, lack of clarity on how we're going to fund this in an efficient manner. And it exposes more risk a lot of times too. So this $1.3 billion of agents in circulation, big number. You can go out there and Google, or more recently ChatGPT, any of these quotes, and we crossed that tipping point. So we really need to give our strategy, governance, and operating model structures the due that it deserves right now.
That's fantastic. And it seems like others have attempted to put some structure around the wild, wild west we are seeing today. You want to walk us through both?
Yes, and for those that have joined Ashling's recent thought leadership, we are very big subscribers of this new Gartner category, BOAT, standing for Business Orchestration and Automation Technologies. We've always long abided by a framework at Ashling called multimodal automation, which had many of these levers that you see here for foundational, core, and now advanced and infrastructural capabilities. So the point is, we are not operating capabilities federated anymore if you actually want to deliver value from AI. You have to have upstream and downstream deterministic workflows that are auditable, that are explainable, and also that run the same way every single time based on regulated industries. But you also need to take advantage of this probabilistic technology in LLM-based agentic solutions. So, BOAT really is the representation from an architecture perspective, probably a level above architecture, frankly. It's a capability map that I think is an extremely good place to start from a guiding capability perspective.
Absolutely. And, who knows how this progresses over the next couple of years? Is the boat going to sink? I'm living for all of the metaphors personally. If you've got your own personal favorite, feel free to drop it in the chat and would love to hear where everyone's dialing in from. I think we've got a smattering today personally, dialing in from Dallas and Houston and Chicago. Feel free to drop that in. Ooh, San Diego. I wish I was there. Can't get distracted. Oh, there you go, Daniel, Toronto. All right. Now, why are we here today? So, personal favorite, a bit of a kid on Christmas morning, pitting Dawn and Marshall against each other in the ultimate face-off. Maybe we keep this going and make it a good theme. As the moderator for our debate today, a couple ground rules, gentlemen. First of all, we're going to keep it civil. We're going to go no cussing. We also will go no name calling. If you want to drop names, all credentials can be had. And we are going to say for each side of this debate, no more than 4 minutes per argument per element of our governance model. We will hear from Don Sweeney around the reasons for convergence of intelligent automation and AI CoEs, and then feign some patience for Marshall as he tries to defend a segregation. Right? We're not showing any bias, of course, but I personally am very excited to see what happens, and I love what AI can do to headshots these days, just personally. All right, with that, Don, can you orient us to the 6 elements we are going to go through today before we drop into the face-off?
Yeah, happy to. And I guess first and foremost, very impressed on your ability to modify faces via AI. So yes,
Okay.
great job there. So the 6 components that we're going to be covering one at a time. We're going to first talk about the strategic direction and governance, really aligning business vision and kind of the overall components and governance of a CoE. We're going to get into architecture and security next. That's somewhat self-explanatory. We're going to get into talent and velocity, making sure you've got the right resources in a CoE and the differentiation, if there is a differentiation between AI and automation. We're going to talk about adding items via pipeline. How are you going out and identifying opportunities for automation and AI, and how do you prioritize those? We'll then talk about continuous improvement, the metrics around continuous improvement, the idea around continuous improvement, and consistently upscaling your CoE and looking for more and more opportunities. And then last and certainly not least, the value tracking and insight. So how are we measuring that value from the prioritization, one of the earlier cycles? How do we continually measure that? And how do we make sure that we are indeed getting the value out that we thought we would be getting?
And Don, honestly, look at us ending with probably the most critical element of a governance model, right? Tracking the value and insights that we can then bring back and brag to the business about.
Yeah, that clearly needs to be aligned across, all tools and technologies. But we'll wait and see what Marshall has to say.
We'll save it for the end. All right. With that, gentlemen, remember, Don will lead us off. We will kick off first with strategic direction and governance. Don, your 4 minutes begins now.
Yeah, and I just want to see if Marshall can make it through with the no cussing rule. So that's going to be a good one. Bonus points for me every time he does. That's
How
for
about
sure.
he can use the chat if he feels so compelled? Yeah.
I'll use a code word. How about that?
There we go.
All right. So jumping in, strategic direction. So we're talking about enterprise alignment. We're talking about the operating model. We're talking about policies and standards. funding model, executive sponsorship. So, first and foremost, when we start talking about the strategic direction of a CoE, we are talking about not going around with a hammer looking for a nail. If you have a tool-based CoE, you are going to be competing against each other, looking for the same opportunities, trying to solve them in two different ways versus the best possible way for you to solve them. We had a client that Marshall and I were talking to, a prospective client. They had an AI CoE, they had an automation CoE, they had a low code CoE, and we said, those are all the same CoEs. So
Mhm.
we really want to make sure that when you're talking about standards, when you're talking about operating model, when you're talking about how to approach this, you're really looking at this as trying to solve a problem, a business objective, corporate objective, if you will, and you're doing that through a strategic direction versus a tool-based direction. Executive sponsorship has really moved more towards an AI focus than an automation focus. It needs to be combined. It needs to have executive sponsorship all across one level and funding. Funding is held from an ROI perspective pretty tightly for automation because that's a little more mature. And we've been a little too cavalier on the AI side. The funding just happens because it's cool technology, and those tend to fail. Gartner has all kinds of data points on 2/3 or greater of AI initiatives have failed so far. Why? Because they're not being held to the same standards that all the other automation initiatives are. So if we really can combine these and hold everything to one funding model, one standard, I think we're going to be a lot more successful. I yield the rest of my time.
Some strong words there, Don, calling out some.
Yeah, I feel like he went over his time there, Morgan. So,
He's at half. Do
okay.
you need the additional 2 minutes, Marshall, to make your case? I'm happy to pass him over.
Think I'm going to need to because I believe that that was a pretty good argument. And I just want the record to state that I drew the short end of the contrarian straw. I think
Look at
increasingly,
this. He's already conceding defeat.
no, no,
Yeah,
I'm just setting
it's a good time.
level expectations so I can build from here at this point.
Ah, okay. Low
So,
bar. I get it.
so my perspective, though, there is an argument here for keeping this separate right now. It's a timing question, but I think the argument, maybe to try to neutralize Don's Pollyannish argument there a little bit, that I've yet to see an enterprise ready for a consolidated strategy. And the fact is, many large Global 2000 organizations and smaller organizations have already achieved great tangible value from their intelligent automation program. And your stat on the failure rate of AI tells me it's going to dilute a good thing. So why wouldn't you let the good thing continue at this point, industrialize intelligent automation a little further? There's different value levers. We're going to talk about value tracking here, but it absolutely, the value equation on AI has not been figured out yet. So a strategy is all about the why. Why are we doing something and how are we going to go capture the flag? And if you don't think you can do that in a converged state over the next 1 to 2 years, why wouldn't you keep it separate right now?
I love that. Not right now.
Yeah,
Yes, but
that is
not
going
right
to be
now.
my theme here. It's not going to be if, it's going to be when. So
Marshall, it's interesting too, because it's almost from a protective posturing, right? Automation has its kind of momentum behind it. Keep going with what's working well, until we figure out and add structure and calculations around the AI governance. Very interesting.
And just to make this, not just a fun kind of theatrical debate, but I think the middle ground, I'll just add on this one is that Don made the point. When you find out that just because we have the boardroom mission of making AI a success, like we bought all this Google stuff, we bought all this AWS, Microsoft stuff. What do we do with it? Understand that you have to sweat those assets, but when objectively it's not going to work, swing back to your industrialized just rules driven deterministic automation capability and let them go do that, right? Because it's proven at that.
Mhm.
So, I think that's the middle ground that every enterprise should look to find, points of intersection to collaborate on.
Very interesting. All right, gentlemen, I think we've got a draw for this round around strategic direction and governance. It could go both ways. I will say our next topic has driven quite a few conversations around AI governance in particular. A lot of people looking at reference architecture and security as driving concerns going into the topic. John, lead us off.
Yeah, I think if you start to look at this in two disparate ways, on the AI side, a lot of the security and data governance uh, is a very strong component of your security, right? You always are locking down how an LLM is gathering its data. You're prioritizing maybe via RAG or something in the order of which it should be reading the documents. There's a lot going on there. Again, I go back to that should be a full, holistic, encompassing strategy versus you look at it and you say, well, RPA is so much more simplistic. It's rules driven. It's going to do exactly what I tell it to do. Therefore, I can have a more simple security rule, and I'm going to really focus all of my architecture or security on the AI side. I just think that that's not a holistic approach. I think you want to make sure that you are looking at this across the board because as we are maturing, we're really looking at steps being RPA and steps being AI and orchestrating across human in the loop, RPA, AI, kind of reporting, whatever else you want to put in there, long running workflows. Uh, all of that is going to be one orchestrated end-to-end automation solution. You really want to have data governance included with automation. You want to make sure that security is fully inclusive of a full process, not, one CoE taking a component of a process and another CoE taking a component of a different part of the process. So, for us, architecture, security, data governance all needs to be holistic, all needs to be seen by one approach. You have one internal audit team, you don't have multiple internal audit teams, or at least just about every organization I've ever met does. So we're really looking at, yes, auditability for RPA is much easier than auditability for AI, but why should it be? Why can't we have auditability across the board and really hold ourselves to the same level of accountability?
Why not? I love the challenge, right? This is important for our automation COEs. It feels like that elevates the same in level of importance for AI. Marshall, what are your thoughts?
Well, I'll tell you why not. So this is a fun little format. I'd like to continue this format. So I just think security postures differ too much when it comes to architecture and security at this point. I mean, if you look at what we're looking to do with deterministic technology, which is more synonymous with automation at this point, you're looking at credentialized systems, SOX ready audit trails. You're looking at just the ability to actually have these inputs and outputs in a deterministic workflow. When you're looking at AI, it's much different. It's data pipelines, it's non-deterministic outputs. It's more so proving that you're staying within the guardrails that you created, as opposed to proving it ran the exact way it was supposed to in a deterministic approach. So my challenge with and I'm not arguing Don's point on the holistic nature is necessary and the fact that you're going to get more value from end-to-end orchestration across multiple tools and capabilities. That's the whole value. I think folks know that from an AI perspective. You can't just have a model, in the middle of a workflow. You got to surround that with humans and action and rules-driven automation. I think at the end of the day, I think it's actually counterintuitive to slow yourself down, actually, if AI is included. So if we have something, if we converge our pipeline and our strategy and our design, and we know we can do it deterministically, I don't want to have to go through three more toll gates to go through, both the deterministic check marks from an architecture and security and compliance perspective, and then have to go to the AI governance one, because then I'm eroding my value. I'm eroding time to market at that point. So I prefer not to have to do that. So I would try to keep this separate then from that perspective. Do I actually think that? I don't know, but I'm just trying to keep at this time.
I think
While I will potentially agree with my colleague that there is some speed to value in not having unnecessary toll gates if those toll gates are not necessary. I would also argue it is potentially dangerous to hold one component of a process to a lesser standard
Mm,
than the rest of it, right? So as you are talking to your accounts payable team, your finance and accounting team, your HR team, whatever, and you're talking about an end-to-end process, they're not thinking about that in four or five different components. You may have a human component, you may have an AI component, you may have an automation component, you may have other components, but they're looking at that just from a business process side. I think we
mm.
need to make sure that we are raising the bar and holding all components accountable to the same level and standard as we would our own employees.
My since Don felt the need to have a rebuttal to my rebuttal, I to his rebuttal to my rebuttal. I can.
We're already creating new rules.
We're breaking the model. Goodness. Okay.
So just a quick point on that, though. I think the challenge there is that business users, end users, let's say it's an HR onboarding workflow that is more end to end now that we have automation plus agentic maybe embedded into this. The challenge there is your business users just thinking it's a credentialized system approach. And they're not thinking about data privacy and the data lineage issue that every enterprise has today. So they are going to have an expectation that you can deliver determinate at a deterministic technology pace. You're not going to be able to do that because there's extra governance tollgates you have to go through, and your data is going to be a mess. So I would argue it's going to erode the internal service catalog of said delivery organization or a third party partner. And so I think we have to just be aware that there's a whole change curve that end users are going to have to go to at this point if we have non-deterministic technology in a longer running workflow.
I hear you, Marshall. I am not necessarily siding with you in this round. I will say the arguments for convergence in this respect are very interesting, right? Every component equal due diligence and scrutiny, especially when it comes to security, feels like it outweighs. But you've highlighted a great point, right? None of this is even possible without the teams that help build and assess and design these solutions. And that brings us to our third element around talent and velocity. Uh,
So for the record, we made it to number 2 out of 6 before we changed the format. So that's a record. We made it to the second one.
Very proud. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So team, on this side, there are certainly going to be, again, components where an AI is going to have a focus on things like a prompt engineer, all these trendy things that you can go work in your Starbucks coffee shop and, try to have some kind of career path on that. Think you're cool, wear your little Seattle knit hat.
We're close to
Um,
name calling here, John. Hold on.
I didn't call Marshall a name. I'm just saying, if you want your prompt engineer career path, that's great. But it is important that any role across a broader automation initiative is included and is considered within this because there is, whether you think it's today or whether you think it's 6 months from now or whatever your timeline is, there is a convergence of capabilities. It wasn't that long ago that you had an OCR dedicated tool, you had an RPA dedicated tool, you had a long running or low code tool, long running workflow or a low code tool, right? A lot of these organizations, a lot of these vendors are now really providing all of those solutions. So really making sure that you have those skill sets within your CoE. If you don't do it now, you're going to need it anyway. So really just making sure that all of these are enabled. You're constantly keeping up to speed on what is on the horizon, and you're incorporating that in your CoE, not creating a separate and distinct, different, unique startup CoE because you think you're a cool startup is really kind of the way to do this. And from a delivery model perspective, really making sure that we have all of our capabilities, all tools in one tool belt, and making sure that we are solving the problems to the best of our capability and in the best way for the organization, not just because I've got one COE who has more bandwidth than the other.
All right, Marshall, some spicy words there. We're
Yeah,
starting to
summarize.
assert our boundaries. What do you
Don, Don's whole point here is that don't be a cool startup, it sounded like. So I don't understand that argument, so I'm going to torpedo it now. So at the end of the day, I think we need to treat our workforce like we treat our agents right now. We have to shrink and specialize because things are moving so fast. That's 101 from an agentic framework architecture perspective. You don't want generalists out there. You want to really shrink and specialize what your agents are doing. Things are moving way too fast. I mean, I think Ashling Partners, as an example, does a pretty good job of providing training and upskilling opportunities for our consultants. And the number one piece of feedback we hear all the time is we have too much training to keep pace with at this point. So, and we do this for a living, day in and day out. I don't understand how a global 2000 organization is going to keep pace. The reason we have talent and velocity connected, by the way, is talent behests velocity. You're not going to be able to move it fast if you don't have the talent that knows what they're doing. So I think this one is pretty clear. You got to keep the talent separated right now. We have different types of skill sets. Yes, upskilling can happen, but it happens once again over time as we mature and we have success, and success breeds more success and more funding and the ability to take time and not focus on velocity. We're not there right now. 2026 is the year to prove it. It's pragmatism. So we need to move fast. We need to make sure we have the experts doing the expert things. Data engineers, ML engineers, research orientation from a data perspective and a profile perspective and a skills library perspective. That needs to be specialized. That needs to be AI specific. Leaning out processes while we think about automation and reimagining business processes and having rules-driven developers and QA and release management. We already know how to do that separately. There's two modes here right now that I don't think we converge right now if we want to actually have demonstrable success.
Don, I might have to give Marshall his tally on this round.
I got one.
I would like to pull
Rebuttal.
I would like to pull the attendees because all I'm hearing is the teacher from Charlie Brown. It's like wah, 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 wah. I didn't even hear a logical argument on that.
All right, let's get some thoughts in the chat around talent and velocity. Are we feeling that we've got greater momentum and value in kind of keeping these teams separate at the time being? Or is it worthwhile effort for us to start to combine their efforts? Feel free to chime in.
Yeah, and since you were giving me an option to rebuttal,
Yeah.
I've never turned down the opportunity to speak.
I didn't hear anybody give you an option, just to be clear.
I thought Morgan did.
Oh.
He calls me Madison one more time. I won't give him.
She's just gonna shut me out. I thought Morgan did. Yeah. Well, anyways, now that we've all agreed that I do have time to do a rebuttal. So if we talk about the last bullet, the change readiness, I think the concern, regardless of what option you have, I think the concern is more the people aspect of this is if you do have multiple CoEs, by human nature, you start to defend your turf. And you will look at all problems being a nail if you have a hammer. And you will dig down and you will defend that your CoE is the right CoE. If there are multiple CoEs, you become very territorial. If that is a combined CoE, it is a broader, holistic approach to the CoE. Mm-hmm. And I think that allows for growth, that allows for change readiness, because you know that growth is going through that CoE. You're not looking at it and saying, oh, there's this new capability, OCR or whatever capability that's been added into this. Is it going to our CoE? Is it going to somebody else's CoE? It really removes the organizational territory infighting, if you have multiple CoEs.
I love it. A bit of validation from our audience today. Amy's highlighting that combining the teams opens up the possibilities in co-solutioning. I think we are going to get into this in our next element too, so it's very exciting. And then Angie highlighting that we really don't have an option, right? The skills gap we are faced with, whether we're hiring in our local kind of areas or looking elsewhere with partnerships, everyone is facing it, right? So is there opportunity in cross-skilling, or kind of furthering capacity in this collaboration? Any reaction before we move on to the next element?
I think
I say we move on because I heard you say that I won this one.
I might want to take that back. We'll see in the next round.
I
Amy's
think we have a
comment.
well-educated attendee list
Yeah.
here. So
We do. Amy does highlight that we've seen a lot of value in combining these solutions. And in that respect, one element of governance is how we maintain pipeline and priority when we have combined solutions. Done.
I want to know the person who put in the comments that they think I'm much better looking.
It definitely wasn't Marshall.
All right. So moving on to pipeline and priority. So again, sound like a broken record, but the same points are always valid until they're proven otherwise. But intake process, you can't have multiple intakes. You got to look at what the corporate objectives are of the organization and have a unbiased, objective criteria intake process, right? This has got to be based on the ROI or impact to the business in other ways. Could be cash flow. It could be slash working capital. It could be a lot of different things, employee experience, customer experience. There's a lot of different ways to measure value, but that needs to be objectively measured and it's got to be one intake process. That intake process should have somebody reviewing the process, understanding the process. You don't automate a bad process. And then a solution architect across all of the various tools and technologies who are bringing, again, the multiple tools in the tool belt to the table to help solve that problem that's been identified. So that's really your intake and your prioritization. Again, prioritization being based on business value. Capacity management. You don't have people with a backlog in one CoE and people twiddling their thumbs thinking about their Starbucks barista experience this morning, in another one. So really all of that capacity going through one is a perfect example for what I believe. The value calculation, I think, is kind of similar to what we were talking about on the prioritization. I think this is key. You have to make sure that you are identifying continuous process improvement metrics. I know there's a lot of debate, whether it's AI or automation, it really doesn't matter, but there's a lot of debate on headcount reduction or the fear of headcount reduction. I don't know if we've necessarily seen headcount reduction as much as people have feared it to be the case. But value calculation needs to be on a continuous process improvement metric. So you want to pick something that is going to be able to be measured month over month, quarter over quarter, not something where, hey, I removed 2 headcount. Okay, well, 6 months from now or a year from now, the funder of your automation CoE is going to say, what have you done for me lately? And you're not going to be able to say, well, we removed 2 headcount out 18 months ago. They're going to say, why am I spending money on it now? So this ongoing cost needs to be ongoing improvement. So just make sure that value calculation, which drives to business ownership and business sponsorship, really comes through continuous process improvement metrics.
100%. And in the previous debate round, Don, you highlighted the kind of why would we solution twice for the same problem? So,
Right.
Marshall, I'd love your thoughts.
Well, first and foremost, I'd like to apologize on behalf of Don Sweeney for anybody that has ever worked at Starbucks or lives in Seattle. And then I would like to call out the fact that I'm feeling a little contradiction at this point. So the reality of combining a pipeline, I think if there's any of these, by the way, taking my debate hat off for a second, that I agree with convergence is this one. I just want to call that out. I think it's so critical.
All right, succession. Okay.
No, look, I have to just be authentic there, but at the same point, I do think there is a counter argument here based on, once again, where you're at with your AI evolution and your automation evolution. So I just think it's going to be a challenge. I think it creates business stakeholdership frustration, and it actually probably doesn't stoke. It actually probably stamps out the AI innovation fires a little bit. Because if you truly have a good intake process, you have objective criteria that treats every idea coming through your prioritization backlog as the same. And if it's objective, I can assure you we've done a lot of LLM-based solutions that we've put into production and a lot of agentic workflows that we've put into production. The value levers are different than what they used to be for deterministic technologies. And if you haven't changed your funding or your ROI, your payback period metrics, guess what actually is going to come through faster? It's going to be the deterministic ones, which they should. You should continue to bring those through. But you probably want to bifurcate. It's what Gartner used to call bimodal, right? It's like, hey, we've got an area that is more commoditized. It works. We have our process down. Let's keep on incrementally getting value from that lever. But let's have a different branch, a different mode of operation that has a higher propensity for learning curves to fail fast. All the startup mentality that you've heard of from down here. And let's give ourselves the ability to learn a little more and place some bets for moonshots later on. And that's where AI is. AI is going to have different value levers. It's not just cost out. It's not just time savings. It's revenue creation. It's incremental churn prevention of clients. We've got insurance companies we've helped prevent client churn with. We've got logistical churns. So think of that as field service churns we've been able to prevent using agentic workflows embedded into a longer workflow. So I just think you're potentially going to actually cut off and evaporate your pipeline if you actually converge this too early, because the AI ideas that all the businesses want to be doing that they're all excited about aren't going to pass muster if it's truly objective. So that's the contradiction I think we got to work through.
It's a bit of a speed. Done.
Sorry, Morgan.
Go ahead.
So I think one other thing to think through and that we're really starting to see in a lot of our clients is what I would call a phase 2 of automations. So now that AI is part of your automation CoE, and we've all agreed that that's the right thing to do, a lot of people are going back and revisiting the success of the automations they have had, especially with the amount of exceptions that are coming out, because automations can tend to be very brittle. Again, it's a very rule structured approach, and adding LLMs or AI components on top of this adds some flexibility, adds an extra layer of capability to the automations, and really gets kind of a second bite of the apple, so to speak, out of your automation initiatives. So really agreeing with a lot of the things that Marshall said, largely because he was agreeing with me. But just kind of adding in one more thing that you should be thinking through is revisiting the 40, 50, 60 automations you have done and looking at how AI can now maybe turbocharge some of the ones that you already have in production.
Look at your business exception logs. Look at the previous pipeline that didn't pass muster not because of business viability, but because of technical feasibility. We can do more, right?
Yeah, and I'm curious for those tuning in, if there's a use case that comes to mind where you were able to kind of reimagine the value from a previously disqualified use case or one that you addressed purely with automation, knowing that we anticipate these pipelines merging at some point in time. What has been the fun one you've seen reemerge? I think we get a lot of the structured extraction now evolving with unstructured, but would love to see kind of the ideas from everyone tuning in. Now, I will side with Don on this one, Marshall. You gave yourself away early on.
Yes.
If anything, a consolidated pipeline allows for transparency that keeps everyone on the same page. The kind of next element does highlight for us a common theme that we have highlighted throughout today's webinar, and that is that things have continued to evolve in capability and in design and how we have tracked value. This to us says we need to prioritize continuous improvement. And with that, Don, I'm going to give you the floor.
Yeah, and I think it's a natural transition from the one that we were just talking about, right? Continuous improvement can mean several different things. You can have continuous improvement metrics on how you're defining success. You can also have continuous improvement in your automations. And adding AI as an extra tool in your tool belt really allows you to go back and improve those automations for improving exception handling, improving user experience, however you're going to improve. So I think there's a lot of value in looking at continuous improvement. As part of this, there's also kind of that what's the next frontier? A lot of organizations are starting to look at orchestration as an example. Okay, well, that's now one more component that you've got to add into your CoE. So when you start looking at like innovation scanning on the list here, start thinking about, okay, what are on the horizons? What are the tools and technologies on the horizon? Bringing that into the CoE is pretty important so you can have that continuous improvement mindset. A component of the CoE will always be looking at what are we doing right now, but a component of the CoE needs to consistently be looking at the horizon and what should we be doing the next 6 months or the next year.
All right, Marshall, does this stymie the velocity of AI pure governance and innovation?
I think it does because I was told I have to take this perspective. But in all sincerity, I think there are a lot of challenges with a CI perspective when you converge intelligent automation and AI too quickly. Once again, it's a timing issue, but I think it blurs a little bit of the accountability, frankly. If especially if your team still have like separate task force, who is responsible for the continuous enhancements? Like we always view this as CI/CD, continuous integration, continuous deployment. And frankly, we should take signals, whether it's a deterministic work, confidence level with a probabilistic technology, an LLM-based solution of some sort. We should take signals on ways to improve our business operations from it. Now, number one, a lot of enterprise don't do that. They just put it in hypercare, then post-production support, and then that's it. They think it's done. I think this is the challenge we're going to have if you converge too quickly because AI is different. Deterministic technology, you can do that a little more systemically with a little more predictability. We all know that anybody that's built an agentic system knows that you can build it quicker, but testing is more scrutinized and more involved by the business stakeholders. And then when you go live, that is a product now. That product needs to be enhanced time and time again. And so that's why ML ops and AI ops are coming into organizations more because it's a different support and enhancement structure that you need than if you were supporting an ERP package or a purely rules driven workflow. So I think the feedback loops are going to be different. The speed is different. The value is going to be different, and it's not just about throughput and stability like it is for deterministic. It's about drift and model accuracy and the prompt and policy training. So very two different discrete sets of CI capabilities and activities we're talking about.
Mm.
So I really think we have to be responsible and truly acknowledge, even if it makes sense in a spreadsheet to combine these. In actuality, these are very different activities we're talking about.
Strong point, strong point. Any rebuttal there, Don?
I don't have a rebuttal because I actually stopped listening to him a couple minutes ago.
Understood, understood.
If, in this day of age, Don, I think we should at least acknowledge the other party and learn to compromise, right? As opposed to just puffing out our chest.
There's
All
no
right.
olive branch today.
Yeah.
But that, it does come out as a bit of a split decision on that one, right? We know a good concerted effort in every CoE is production monitoring, and execution of that with a purely AI solution and a purely automation solution can look very different. As these solutions combine, as we have predicted in the chat, the element that emerges is how do we track the value in production and what the business is seeing in return. And that brings us to probably our most compelling element of governance, critical to sustainment of our programs as value tracking and insights. Don.
So I will extend an olive branch to my esteemed colleague who
My
wants
roommate.
a kinder, gentler debate. And
Mm.
I will say there are certainly items that you may want to track differently from an AI perspective. I just don't agree with it. but that was my olive branch. So I would say the challenge, and I started this, and I'll end with this. The challenge is right now that a lot of our AI automations, when I say our, I mean the global ecosystem here. What we're seeing is a lot of these are failing. A lot of these are not moving past proof of concept, proof of value, because they don't have demonstrable value. They're doing it because it's cool or because CFO, CEO went to a Gartner conference and came back and said, we need some AI. And so people are doing AI for the sake of AI. I think to really make sure that this is sustainable, and it will be sustainable. Let's be very clear on that. AI is a fantastic. I mean, that's a very broad term, first of all, but it's a fantastic capability that is now being added to an automation capability to really turbocharge your automations. But the value should still be value. Like when we were talking about kind of the pipeline and the measurements, that value framework should still be value framework. You can have value framework be beyond hours back to the business and, kind of the traditional things. As I mentioned before, you can have customer experience, you can have employee experience, you can have measurable, net promoter score type objective criteria that measures things besides hours back to the business. But we should still hold all AI and automation accountable to providing ROI and making sure that we have that continuous improvement metric so we can make it sustainable. I think the problem right now is too many people are doing AI because it's the shiny coin syndrome, and people are trying it because they're told to try it, and they didn't really have the discipline of making sure that there's a real business value to do it.
All right, Marshall, what do you think? Can we add bragging rights and cool shit to the list of metrics and measurable KPI for an
Hey,
AI
for
COE?
for the record, Morgan was the first one to swear.
Yeah, it's my
Yep.
brand. Sorry about that. All right, Marshall.
We lost that, Morgan. I feel like I'm in that scene from Old School. I frankly don't even know how to respond to that. Not because it was such a great response, because it was such a meandering response. Trying to
Ah,
figure out what the point there was, Don. Let me bring it back to a state of logic here from an argument perspective. So, the value tracking piece to me, I look at, this is real world experience. I hear three questions, and we talk to, clients 10 times a week at least at this point, and it's been consistent for the last 18 months, frankly. But the third question I'm about to go through has really kind of turned up from a volume perspective. So it's number one, what is your definition of agentic? Number two, give me some real world examples where this has actually been deployed in production. And number three, tell me how they calculated value. And that third piece is really in the eye of the beholder. Anybody that's done advanced business cases, value engineering, knows that it's really hard to come up with value levers. Deterministic technology is a little easier when you introduce productivity agents that enhance 2,000 of your sales operations folks, but only by a minute or two. And but there's so much other intangible value that we should also be calculating. It becomes really hard to consolidate value units of measurement that we want to track and convey back to our boards, our C-suite, request additional funding from. And so, to me, a bird in the hand is what you should focus on, because deterministic is a lot easier to track value. It's a little easier to convert that to capacity back to the business. I just look at where the AI world is right now. I actually think you're going to see more decentralization of value tracking in the form of line of business task forces before you see a convergence again. The shared service group at a large financial service organization is going to track a lot of different value metrics than the personal, and they're going to track different measurements than the commercial lending group, right? It's really going to be hard to centralize like a catalog of value metrics in the near term from AI, considering there's opaqueness, there's subjectivity. But as long as that line of business is seeing value, hell, who are we to question their value equation at this point? If they're going to help fund and they're going to help, kind of give process owner time to these workflows. We just talked about how that was really critical. The skill sets change. as these become products, I think you keep these separate at this point.
All right, Don, it does feel like Marshall's taking a very, it depends on the stakeholder, depends on the use case type shaky
Yeah.
argument. Do you have any thoughts?
I think there's a lot of value in what he said, regardless of whether it's centralized or decentralized, right? I think the points there are, let's make sure that we have measurable business value. We can defend that business value, and let's make sure that we have an ongoing measurement of that business value, regardless of whether you got 5 CoEs or 1 CoE. I think we can all agree on that. And the last bullet here, storytelling and branding. I want to make sure we don't skip over that, as I know we're coming to an end here. That I'll give a little shout out to Morgan and Madison and Dave Babcock, Joe. There's plenty of people who work on that, Philip, and others in our organization help our clients basically create success stories, success videos. This is something everybody should be doing. Like when you have a successful automation, AI, whatever project come to completion, you want to make sure that you can now tell that story and tell that story aligned to business value and effectively memorialize it, right? Because again, somebody's going to come back and question that 6 months from now, a year from now, 2 years from now. You want to make sure that you've got something that builds momentum so other people jump in as you're part of the CoE. You want to shout from the rooftop your successes. But you also want that memorialized and make sure that it's documented and kind of in a sales-esque way to your executives and to other people who now may also want to participate or bring ideas to the CoE.
Don, this time of year also reminds me of annual performance reviews. So having something like that externally validated as well is helpful in that respect. But Don, you're absolutely right. We're coming to the end of our time together. I want to remind everyone that there are a lot of resources available in our space as you're tackling these challenges, the likes of key analyst firms like Gartner, obviously vendors like UiPath, but probably more importantly, true partners like Ashling. We'd love to kind of speak with you and answer any questions. I have one question for you, though, as we come to the end of our time. And that is, who won in today's debate? Do we see value and a future with a converged AI and intelligent automation CoE, or do we see value and segmentation in pursuit of digital transformation for our organizations? No bribes, gentlemen. That's the last rule. Feel free to answer in the chat or separately. We'll be sure to follow up with some key assets, kind of a recording available. And if you have any questions and want to do a sidebar, happy to do so as well.
Morgan, if I could, just one last piece. Yeah, hopefully this was a fun format because frankly, we're trying to mimic what we were hearing at our clients. Like this is it. Like this is the metaphorical approach to this. I think there's a term a thought process I always have going back to the Gartner boat. It's really one boat, two engines, but one navigation system. Like that's really what we're shooting for. That's like North Star, if you will, to expand the nautical themes here. But that's really what organizations should be shooting for from our perspective. So there's no perfect answer. There's no right answer. It's based on maturity, timing, and frankly the posture of your organization. But I think the point is, as long as you're being thoughtful and objective on some of this, then I think everybody wins.
All right, Don. He's doubling down on his argument just to get the last minute votes. Any words?
I am going to take the high road and say I will use my last 30 seconds to say thank you for hosting, Morgan. Thank you for moderating. You did an excellent job keeping the two of us in line, which is close to impossible. Thanks for Madison for the slides and all the great content, and appreciate everybody who jumped on. Happy holidays to all.
You can't go with the high road for the last 60 seconds when you went the low road the first.
Hey, everybody remembers how you end. Everybody remembers how you end.
All right, everyone. Enjoy your holiday time. Go and discern this question. We'll revisit this in the new year. I appreciate
Thanks so much.
Thank you all.